Welcome and thank you for attending the Fenton Area Public Schools Education Truth and Taxation presentation, Monday, June 26th. I will call this to order at 2:45. The Truth and Taxation is a presentation required by law to the district setting its millage rate, which will occur momentarily. Just a reminder, while this meeting is public, it is for the purpose of conducting district business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. However, there will be opportunity for citizens to address the board as indicated in agenda item 4. If you plan, oh, excuse me, nope, 4, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. 4. Are we good? Yep, no problem. If you plan to make a comment during that time, please make sure Stephanie has your form. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Mrs. Crew? Here. Mr. Pierce?
Here.
Mrs. Rasmussen?
Here.
Mrs. Jones? Here. Mr. Welch?
Here.
And Mrs. Peterson, all present.
All right. And we will stand for thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Real quick, can I get a motion to approve the agenda for this hearing? Okay, I have a motion.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. So we'll move on to citizens' request to address the board. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, we have Jannette R.
Hi, good afternoon. I am wondering, last meeting, when I asked for my time back after being heckled from the crowd, I was told yes, I would get my time back. But when I reviewed the video, I did not get my time back. So, how do I go about getting my time back?
Go ahead.
So can I get it for the next meeting, because I wasn't prepared? Okay, thank you. On January 8th, on the Fenton Family for Equality page on Facebook, a letter was posted from the ACLU, and it was dated June 5th, and it was addressed to the Fenton Board of Education. I'm wondering, I never saw that letter posted anywhere else other than on the page, Facebook page of the Fenton Families for Equality. How did they get that letter? Does anybody know how they got that letter and why was it not distributed to the public then? It's regarding the equality badges, and just my printout alone is 3 pages from the ACLU. So someone on the board gave it to that group. I think there should be an investigation, because you've got what we all hate to hear about, a leaker on the board. That's not fair, that's not right. Honestly, I wanna know who would have leaked that letter. And so you know that someone who is applying for this position tonight saw it and liked it. And apparently I'm not allowed to mention names or whatever, but it's a man and his name rhymes with sky. So I hope you'll take that into consideration when you choose someone tonight, because to me that tells me that that particular person is not going to be neutral to this whole badge issue and the issues that are related to it. And again, I'm asking you as a board to find out who leaked that letter. It's not fair. And if you're gonna give a letter, if it was someone on the board, if you're gonna give it to one group, then you need to give it to the other group also. I'm sure you agree on that. I don't know how you could not agree on that. And Heidi, really, I really wish that when people come up here to speak, that you could take 2 minutes, just like you were taught in your training, just pay attention. It's really disrespectful. It's hard for us to come up here and speak, and then to not get attention, to not be given that courtesy. I just really think it's unprofessional and it's not fair. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jannette. All right, at this time, Dr. Busch.
Thank you, Ms. Ross-Messler, members of the Board of Education. The Truth and Taxation hearing is held in compliance with state law prior to the Board of Education adopting millage rates for the 23-24 school year. The purpose of this hearing is to outline the various millage rates the board will be requested to approve later today. The first item is Board Action Item 10.3, which is a request to levy 5 mills to generate revenue to service the debt on the district's bond obligations. The district currently has 4 outstanding bond obligations. To service the 2014 debt, a 0.64 levy is recommended. To service the 2015 debt, a 3.4 mil levy is recommended. And to service the 2018 debt, a 0.48 mil levy is recommended. Finally, to service the 22 debt, a 0.48 mil levy is recommended. The 2014, 18, and 22 debts are a result of a technology and transportation bond approved by the voters in November of 2014. In the 2015 issue, which you'll notice is a little bit larger in terms of debt service at 3.4 mils, is a refinance of the 1998, 2005, and 2006 bonds. The next item that you'll see on the agenda later today is a request, Board Action Item 10.4, to levy 18 mills on non-homestead properties in the district for general operating funds. This levy represents approximately $6.3 million in revenue that post-proposal A, the state of Michigan assumes each district collects. This levy represents our local effort in funding schools. Finally, Board Action Item 10.5 is a request to levy 0.8707 mils on all property for the purpose of generating sinking fund revenue for sinking fund projects. The sinking fund generates approximately $820,000 in revenue for infrastructure and physical plant needs within the district that would otherwise have to come from general operating funds. This concludes the Truth and Taxation hearing for the 23-24 fiscal year, which begins July 23rd and concludes on June 30th, 2024. I'll return during the action items section of the board agenda to request formal approval of these items. Board had any questions? I'd be happy to take them.
Questions for Dr. Busch?
Just clarify, this is not changing anything that's currently in place, correct?
No, this doesn't change anything that's currently in place. Our current debt levy for 22-23 is 5.1 mils. This drops it down to 5.0 mils, so a slight millage reduction. But other than that, continuing the programs we've had in place.
So it isn't across the board decrease?
I'm sorry?
It isn't across the board decrease?
It is an across the board decrease, yes, with respect to the debt.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Busch. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, that concludes our Truth and Taxation public hearing. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the Truth and Taxation public hearing.
Okay.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We will adjourn at 2:54. It is to not be considered a public meeting. However, there will be opportunity for citizens to address the board as indicated in agenda item 9. If you have not already done so and you plan to make public comment, please fill out a form and make sure Stephanie has it. Okay, can I get a roll call?
Yep, Mrs. Crowe? Here. Mr. Pierce?
Here.
Mrs. Rossmaster?
Here.
Mrs. Jones? Here. Mr. Welch?
Here.
And Mrs. Jewell? All present.
All right, let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Okay, we have motion,
Support?
motion and support. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda approved. Right, moving on to item 5, approval of consent agenda consisting of the regular meeting minutes from June 5th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved to support?
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to administrative reports. All right, we do not have any tonight, and we do not have any student representative reports, so we'll move on to board subcommittee meetings. There were 3 subcommittee meetings, since our last meeting. On June 15th, the policy subcommittee met. Mr. Welch came in place of Mrs. Dickey. We continued to work through our board operating manual, and we received public comment around ways to improve our DEI initiative for our staff and students. And then we will continue working through our protocol manual with the hopes of getting that in front of us for our workshop in August. And next we had operations. Matt, do you want to report out?
Yeah, Renee and Mike and myself sat in operations meeting, met with the architect for the potential bond coming down the pipeline, and just talked about some of the facilities and what was required and layouts and just, you know, overall big picture stuff at this point. And most importantly, got some really good feedback from Jeff Setsky. Took part of it as well. We invited him to be a part of it, and some of the building principals were involved as well, and just got a different perspective of what maybe the architect or the designers maybe thought might work for certain aspects versus what coaches and staff and everything else might have input on, and he provided some really, I felt, to be very good. I would assume you felt the same way, and Mike as well. I just got an awful lot out of what he brought to the table, and it brought up some really good dialogue about not only short-term but long-term, how we want to deal about doing it.
And finance, Mike?
So we just met this morning at 8 o'clock for finance. So, and a lot of the things that we talked about in finance are the things that we're going to be doing in for resolutions for the taxes. So 10.3, 10.4, 10.5 on the agenda today. Pretty much what we talked about. We talked about end of year budget amendments, preliminary 23-24 budgets, and that's pretty much it. Is there any-
Yep, we're still looking at about a 50 student decrease for next year. And that it looks like a $450 increase per pupil for spending. So those were the other 2 items we looked at. All right. Any questions on subcommittees? All right. Citizens request to address the board. Stephanie? Okay. Moving to item 9. So this is an opportunity for the public to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items. All comments or concerns should be directed to the board only and limited to 3 minutes. Please be advised this is not an opportunity for participants to converse in two-way communication with the board or other members of the community, but for the board to hear comments or concerns. If warranted, school administration may follow up before or at the next regular board meeting. Mrs. Jones will raise her hand when you have 30 seconds remaining. And in per best practices, we're going to utilize another officer. Mr. Welch will just help assist to make sure compliance of our public participation policy tonight. Okay.
Yeah, and I would like just to make,
Yeah.
just,
Yep.
Jeanette brought up something in the last meeting, and I wanna make sure
Yep.
she gets that time.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yep, we'll make sure that 30 seconds is added. Yep.
And all she was referencing about what, if you kinda get off task as far as addressing the audience, that's not what you're here for. The agenda and everything is directed at us or whatever you wanna speak to, and all I'll do is just remind you of that. That's it. Thank you.
All right, with that being said, I will go in the order that I received these. So Deanna Cipher.
I'm Deanna Cipher. I live at 10015 Walnut Shores Drive. To each of the sitting board members, I'm addressing the board vacancy. We had an election in November of '22, which was only 7 months ago, and the community voted. Rochelle Edmonds received over 3,000 votes and was next in line at this election. And while I feel there are several candidates that submitted their names and would be great members, it seems only fair and just that at this newly open vacancy, it should be given to Rochelle. She ran for the position, and here she is 7 months later, and she's still willing to serve. While we have watched you not listen to your community, we certainly hope you will do the right thing with this vacancy, choose the candidate that was next in line and had tremendous support from the community. This is supposed to be a community vote, and this board all of you were placed here by the people that voted for you, and you should vote as the people did in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Jason Teddy.
Good afternoon, Jason Teddy, Fenton. Over the past several months, this board has demonstrated political activism and a lack of transparency that has undermined the credibility of the board and sowed division within the community. This was brought on by the actions of a few and do not represent the values of our community as a whole. One board member promotes the woke ideology on a board-related social media page and often wears shirts to board meetings displaying various social justice slogans, all to get a seat on the board in furtherance of her own political aspirations. This board has allowed the political interests of labor parties and the woke culture to influence its decision-making. I think we all remember the infamous red dress of solidarity. That board member placed allegiance to a union and its political causes ahead of the interests of the majority of our children. When the badges were first questioned, the board claimed to have no knowledge or involvement, but we later learned that the district paid for the badges. This was all done behind closed doors and without the knowledge of parents or community. The state of Michigan estimates the LGBTQ population in public schools at about 14% of the student body. What about the other 86%? There are many emotional pleas citing inclusion and equality for marginalized populations. Inclusion means everybody, not those demanding special recognition and not at the expense of the other 86%. This board is expected to promote the welfare of the whole, not the special interests, and it's done through existing policies related to harassment, discrimination, or bullying. A board member once lamented that this issue has caused division and he wanted his community back. This board allowed that to happen. It allowed political activism and social justice initiatives to infect our school system, all because a small population demanded that its ideology be accepted and promoted. Those in opposition to the badges did not set out to persecute anyone or challenge their beliefs. Those in opposition merely reacted to an ideology being forced upon their children. You pick this fight. Your choice of a new treasurer will be scrutinized. I pray you choose wisely.
Kim Owens.
Kim Owens, 7415 Cutterwood Drive. I'm parent of 2 FAP students. Once again, I would like to thank you all for your service to our schools. Your task today is a tough one, and I do not envy your position at all. There are several candidates who are beyond qualified for this position, and I know that their experience, education, and expertise in various areas will make your decision extremely difficult. As you deliberate, I hope you keep in mind our mission statement at Fenton, which states, Fenton Area Public Schools is committed to providing educational excellence in collaboration with our community and developing innovative leaders for a global society. Furthermore, our vision statement reads, Fenton Area Public School students are empowered to excel in an evolving world. Fenton is a wonderful community. However, it lacks diversity. Recent events in our district have made this clear. If we truly want to help our students become innovative leaders in an ever-evolving world, then we need to innovate and evolve as well. I hope that the candidate you choose today will be a step forward in that direction. I hope you take into consideration all that the candidates will bring to the table, not just what you see on paper, not just what you hear from us. Most of all, I hope that you choose the candidate who will move our district forward in the right direction and represent all of our students, teachers, families, and community. Thank you.
Stephanie Titolani.
Not enough pockets.
Oops, I'm sorry. You're good.
Okay, Stephanie Titolani, 2nd Street, Fenton, Michigan, resident since 1992. I think it is important to choose the right person. I would personally support Michelle. As it was already mentioned, she was like extremely close. My understanding is like only 7 points or 7 votes short of being elected to a seat. So personally, I would support her 100%. Something was just mentioned about needing diversity in the community. Again, I've lived here since 1992. I had a professional relationship with a gay man back in 1980, and Fenton was well known then as a safe place for the LGBTQ. I mean, it was just mainly lesbian and gay language back then, but it was a well-known community as being safe for lesbian and gay people. So to make comments or statements otherwise, I just don't understand. Now, my big bone to pick is which board member contacted the ACLU? That's what I would love to know. Bigger question is who is the board member that submitted
Stephanie,
it?
can you please address all of us here?
Oh.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Who was the board member that submitted it to a Facebook group? I believe it's called Fenton Families for Equality. I mean, that letter, the entire letter was submitted to that Facebook group, and it was on the internet. Last I knew, it was still on the internet.
Yes.
That is absolutely shameful behavior. The continuing marginalization of the parents against the badge is shameful. It's not the entire board participating in it. I believe that there's one person in particular, and who knows, maybe a couple of others, but it needs to stop. You're a board that's supposed to be for the entire community, not just for a 14% of the community. Thank you for your time. I'm
Yeah. Mary Kozlowski.
Hi, I'm Mary Kozlowski, Fenton, Michigan. I'm here to address the board on the board position. We all know Rochelle was very close. I don't know if the votes or whatever, but it was really close. And Rochelle Edmonds, I feel, should get this seat. I mean, you all ran, you all did the work, she did the work. So if you want your community happy, I feel you should put Rochelle Edmonds in there. I'm not saying the other candidates aren't good candidates, but you should do what your community wants. I'm just saying, if you don't put her in there, I think you're setting yourself up for a lot of trouble. I mean, I'm not threatening or anything like that, it's just what your community wanted. I mean, I pray you do the right thing, what your community wants. I mean, it's the fair thing to do. Don't you think we should do what's fair? She is the next one in line, she was right there. You guys know how hard you all worked. She worked hard just like you guys. To put somebody else in there, I just think that the community is gonna be very upset and it's not the fair thing to do. So I pray to God you do the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jannette Ropetta. Yes.
Jannette Ropetta, and I live in Fenton, and thank you to the board for granting me back those few seconds, but important seconds that I was interrupted last time. So I do appreciate that. I'm probably not even gonna take up that time tonight, but I hope that this serves as maybe a reminder to everybody that they should not heckle us from the crowd as we're speaking, that just isn't fair. But I have to say that also my whole purpose for what I wanted to speak of, which I did follow up with all of the board, and I sent you what I wanted to say that night. I did get a reply back from Heidi, but that part was, I was not able to say what I wanted to say that night because of it. Also, what the speaker before, I don't know what I'm allowed to say here, so stop me if I'm not addressing anyone in the crowd, but someone who spoke about the ACLU letter. If anybody wants to go back and look at the tape from the first meeting, I also spoke on that. I have the same questions, and I will say it again. If there's a leaker on the board, find out who it is and put a stop to it. This is dividing the community when things like this happens. Who wrote that letter to the ACLU? Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Laurie Adams.
Hi, I'm Laurie Adams. I'm also a Fenton resident. I live at 12446 Orchardwood Drive. I'm just here to announce my support for multiple candidates for the board position. I agree that Rochelle was so close to being being elected before, that she should be considered. I also feel like Brian Elterham would be a great candidate for the board because he's got some HR experience that I think would be very beneficial. Plus his personality would kind of balance out the board that I feel. Okay. Also, Stephanie, that's running, has been a great voice of just calmness and balance for things that I see that needs to happen with the board. And that's where I wanted to let you guys know how I feel about that. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Laurie. Stephanie, any additional?
No.
Okay, we move on to agenda item 10. So, as we discussed last meeting, we appointed Mike Pierce a temporary treasurer, after Mrs. Dickey's resignation to conduct board business through the month of June. Mike does sit on the finance committee, so we now need to appoint an official treasurer through the remainder of this year, and then those will be redetermined again in our organizational meeting in January. I did not have anyone reach out saying they were interested, but I will put it out there if anyone else is interested in taking that on. Okay. If not,
Is this one of those that you have to state it multiple times?
yep, yep. So if not, I have Mike Pierce. I would like to recommend that we keep him on as treasurer since he sits on the finance committee. Do we have any other nominations?
Do you need a motion for that?
I have to call for nominations 3 times. Any other nominations? And any other nominations? So I will need a motion to approve Mr. Pierce as the treasurer for the remainder of 2023.
I move to appoint Michael Pierce as board treasurer until January 8th, 2024.
Okay. I have a motion. Do we have support?
Support.
Okay, motion and support.
No, I'm waiting for discussion.
Oh, any discussion?
Did you say 2024?
Yeah, it's until January of next year.
Oh, my
Or it's just a mistake,
Yep, you're right. Cause
I'm
our
a long way. I'm
organizational,
sorry.
no,
Okay,
you're
we're already
right.
halfway through 20.
Our organizational meeting will be on January
Right.
8th. Yep, so the few
My
days in
apologies.
January. Nope,
Okay, I hesitated too because I was confused.
Yep. Nope, we're good. January 8th, 2024. Any other discussion? All right, so we have a motion and support. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Pierce, for being willing to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, 10.2, resolution to approve final 2022-2023 general fund budget amendment. Dr. Busch.
Thank you, Mrs. Ross Messler, members of the Board of Education. Our Finance Committee has met throughout the year and received regular updates on our general fund budget. This action item will conclude the fiscal year with respect to a closing budget amendment projecting revenues of $45,623,764, expenditures of $45,564,598, with a surplus of approximately $60,000, bringing our fund balance to $9,700,516. Function as a revenue, our fund balance as a percentage of our revenue is 21.3, and our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures is also 21.3. So, by way of information, we'll ask the board to approve this in just a second. The fiscal year concludes on June 30th. The new one begins on July 1st, which we'll talk about in just a second. We have our preliminary audit next week, and then our comprehensive audit the week of September 14th. We'll meet with the Finance Committee at the week ending, maybe the 1st of October, to go over the preliminary audit review after our books are completely closed for this fiscal year. And then the board will receive a comprehensive update by our external third-party auditor, Jannette R, on November 1st. Closing out this fiscal year, a couple of things to keep in mind. Now that we're 3 years past the initial pandemic funding, we're moving through those ESSER grants that we've used to help sustain our operations. We're going to carry over, which I'll talk about in just a second, about $650,000 of ESSER 3 funding, and then we'll have exhausted that specific ESSER funding. The other piece to this fiscal year budget, reflects a small surplus, building that fund balance a little bit, and that's by design as we continue to work to kind of right-size things again post-pandemic. So presenting this evening, again, that'll be subject to a final audit and update with a preliminary result in October and a final result in November.
Any questions for Dr. Busch? Okay. I need a resolution to approve the final 2022-2023 general fund budget amendment
So resolved.
as presented. Okay. We have a resolution. Do we have support?
Support?
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Stephanie, can I get a roll call?
Mrs. Pruitt?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Rossmaster?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones? Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And Mrs. Jewell? All yes votes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Busch. And 10.3, resolution to levy debt retirement millages.
Thank you, Mrs. Rossmessler. Members of the Board of Education, this item corresponds with the Truth and Taxation hearing we had just a few minutes ago. This action item requests an overall debt levy of 5 mills, down from 5.1 the previous year, to service the debt from 2014 to 2015 refinance, 2018 and 2022.
Any questions? Do I have a resolution to approve the debt retirement levy for 2014, 2015, 2018, and 2022 as presented? So resolved. Okay, resolution, do I have support?
Support?
Resolution and support, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, can we get a roll call?
Mrs. Pruitt?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Rossmaster?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And Mrs. Jewell? Yes. All yes votes.
Thank you.
10.4, resolution to levy 18 mills on non-homestead property for the purpose of general fund operations for the 2023-2024 school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Rossmessler. Members of the Board of Education, again referencing the Truth and Taxation hearing we had a few minutes ago. This is a resolution to levy 18 mills on non-homestead property for the purposes of our operations. This levy represents just over $6 million, and that is our local effort or our local tax collection. Post-proposal, the state of Michigan assumes we levy these 18 mills, and that is what goes in to the district's $46 million or so general fund budget. $6 million of it is from local tax collection, and your authorization this evening will allow us to do that.
Any questions?
Just to clarify, this is not, again, there's no change in what's currently out there.
That's correct. This is a levy we bring before the board each year. It's required by the state, and it is nothing.
Do we have a resolution to levy 18 mills on non-homestead property for the purpose of general fund operations for 2023-2024 school year?
So resolved.
Resolution, do we have support? Support. Any discussion? Okay, Stephanie, roll call?
Mrs. Pruitt?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Rossmaster?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones? Yes. Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And Mrs. Jewell?
Yes.
All yes votes.
Thank you.
Okay, 10.5, resolution to levy 0.8707 mills on all property for the Fenton Area Public Schools building site and sinking fund for the 2023-2024 school year. Dr. Busch.
Thank you, Ms. Rossmessler. Members of the Board of Education, this is the last companion item that we discussed at the Truth and Taxation hearing a little bit earlier today. This resolution is to levy 0.707 mills on all property for the district's building site and sinking fund. This generates approximately $820,000 in revenue that's specifically allocated for physical infrastructure and physical plant use that would otherwise have to come from our general fund. And this was passed by our voters in 2022. It's a 10-year levy that runs through 2032. And again, this helps us with our infrastructure needs, our physical plant needs, so that those dollars are specifically allocated and not pulled out of the classroom or general operating fund.
Just clarification, it's 8707.
Did I bump it up or bump it
You
down?
forgot the 8.
8707. Those decimal points,
They
thank you. Those decimal points with millages. Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Busch?
No questions, but I thought it'd be good, again, just to put it out there so people understand that it's not changed from what it currently is right now, and this is for the sinking fund, which can only be used for fixed items within the building, not for furniture, furnishings, those types of things. We're talking about boilers, we're talking about things that, structural, those types of roofs.
Security.
Correct. Correct.
And this is something we've had in place since the mid-1980s to help with those costs.
And it was renewed in 2022 by the voters.
Good.
Yes. Yep. Great clarifications. Do we have a resolution to levy .8707 mills on all property for the Fenton Area Public Schools building site and sinking fund for the 2023-2024 school year?
So resolved.
Resolution and support, any discussion? Okay, roll call, Stephanie?
Mrs. Prue?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross Messler?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And Mrs. Jewell? Yes. All yes votes.
Thank you.
Alright, item 10.6, resolution to approve 2023-24 preliminary general fund budget, Dr. Busch.
Thank you, Ms. Ross Messler, members of the Board of Education. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we close out the fiscal year on June 30th. We start another one on July 1st. This is the preliminary budget for 23-24. The state of Michigan requires us to have a budget presented prior to the July 1 start date. There's a couple variables with this budget, as there often is at this point in the year. The first one is the state of Michigan has not finalized its state school aid bill yet. So, as in the case in many years, we're using an estimate. The estimate that we selected was based on a number of different sources, but we're looking at a per pupil allowance increase of about $450. That's based off of the governor's recommendation. We think once the House, the Senate, and the executive get together this week, hopefully they'll pass a state funding bill that'll be very close to that amount. The other thing that we're anticipating in this is increased funding for at-risk pupils. And then the other component that is a variable at this point in the school year is what our student enrollment is going to be. And we utilize some local historical metrics here. The second outside source, that's an inside source. The outside source that we utilize is the Genesee Intermediate School District. And then the third outside source that we use is the Michigan Alliance for Educational Opportunity, which was formerly the Middle Cities Association. And right now we have a projection of a reduction of 50 students. Generally speaking, that is, kind of across the board in our K-12 model. Right now, what we're tracking is our outbound class of 2023 that graduated last month, and what our inbound classes, kind of the ins and outs are a key metric for us. And right now, there's about 100 student difference. We have about 100 less kids coming in at the beginning. The class of 20, 30 something, I can't remember what it is. 2036, thank you. Is about 100 pupils less right now at this minute than the class of 2023 outbound. And that is not abnormal, however, it's something that we need to plan and maintain for. So a couple of things that are included in this budget that are very important is the state of Michigan helps supplement our retirement contribution. Our retirement contribution will be close to 48% this year. So for every dollar in salary that's paid, we pay the state 48 cents towards pension obligation. About 20% of that is a pass-through from the state, but that's a significant portion to help keep us solvent, the pension system solvent. Projecting about $653,000 in ESSER 3 carryover. We have dollars still remaining that have to be spent by September 1st of 2024. Projecting about $250,000 in carryover from our 31O school social worker / school nurse program. And then we've got some carryover, another $250,000 in the school safety grant we awarded last year. So those are a couple key metrics on the revenue side. On the expense side, we've worked really hard about the last 7 years to maintain a curriculum budget. That's set at $300,000 for next year. It's a $50,000 increase from this year. We did reduce our staffing levels on the teaching side by attrition, with some resignations and then some pullback on FTE at the kindergarten level. We've got staff salary increases that are bargained in here. And then we've also built in funding for that second school resource officer from the police department. We're seeing small increase in the area of insurance costs, particularly our staff insurances and property side. Happy to report our workman's comp costs have actually gone down. Very excited about that. Then the final thing on the expense side that's worth mentioning is this will be our 5th year in a row that we haven't had to borrow because the state of Michigan doesn't process a state aid payment in the month of September, and that's going to save us about $75,000 this year. It's also a good indicator of fiscal health when you don't have to have cash flow borrowing. So pleased to present this preliminary budget, and then we will revisit it this fall once our enrollment is done, once the state decides their budget, and we have some of those assumptions that are turned into actuals. So we ask for your approval this evening.
Okay. Any questions?
So I don't keep bugging you, when would be a realistic time frame? I know it's all based on Lansing, but what's realistic?
Every year they promise by July, or every year they promise by June 1st. The reality of it, it's usually July 1st. So I would say sometime this week, and being right in or around that $450 figure is what we'll be looking for. I don't expect it to swing too far either way based on what we're hearing out of Lansing. Some years we have it by that June 1st. Unfortunately, there's been some years when we haven't received it until December, which presents a real hardship in terms of projecting our budget. Then occasionally, they'll change it in the middle of the year, and it's always a reduction when they change it mid-year, and that's even more difficult. But big picture, Mr. Welch, hoping by July 1st, they're supposed to adjourn sometime this week for their summer recess. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Can I get a resolution to approve the 2023-24 preliminary general fund budget as presented?
So resolved.
Support. Resolution and support. Any discussion? Okay. Stephanie, roll call.
Mrs. Crew?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross Messler?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones? Mr. Welch?
Yes.
And Mrs. Jewell?
Yes.
All yes votes.
Thank you.
All right, 10.7, motion to approve the PQA bond application. Dr. Busch.
Thank you, Mrs. Ross Messler. Members of the Board of Education, in January of 2023, the district engaged with King Scott, which is an architecture firm, to conduct a facility study. That was a result of strategic planning work that was done first semester of the 2022-23 school year, which identified some facility areas for improvement. King Scott conducted a comprehensive needs facility that resulted in over $300 million of potential facility projects. The district, King Scott, and George W. Auk, our construction manager, pared down the facility needs to $123,950,000 worth of projects for potential no tax increase bond in November of 2023. On June 5th, you may recall a little bit earlier this month, the board authorized King Scott, Auk, and district staff, myself and Mrs. Sosowski, to prepare a preliminary qualification application to the Michigan Department of Treasury for a potential bond. This application allows the district to use the credit rating of the state. Said differently, you have to turn in this application so the state will allow you to use their credit rating, which is much bigger and more comprehensive than the district's. On June 23rd, just last week, representatives from King Scott, Auk, Troon, our bond counsel, Mrs. Sosowski, and myself met with the Michigan Department of Treasury to present what's called the preliminary qualification document. You have that attached in your packet. That document is a comprehensive review from our construction managers and from our architects on the potential $123 million bond. The state looks at our enrollment projection, our building capacities, and the things that we may do in a potential bond. And again, they kind of have to approve it for us to use the credit rating. That meeting took place on Monday. They had a couple of tweaks, very minor things. asked our architect to add. Those additions were made over the weekend, and the final PQA document or preliminary qualification application to use the state's credit rating is in front of you this evening. A potential bond would be structured to reflect a no increased tax levy over the current rate and be sold in 3 series in the following amounts. Series 1, which would fall in the first quarter of 2024, in the amount of $49.7 million. Series 2 in the second quarter of 2026 would be in the amount of $54.1 million. And the third series, which would fall in the second quarter of 2029, would be in the amount of $17 million. The board action that you see in front of you tonight requests approval by the final, on the final preliminary qualification document, and authorizes the board secretary and the treasurer to sign for that document. So again, going all the way back to last fall with our strategic plan, facility study, we've arrived at this point with our architect and our construction manager that the application requesting your approval tonight would allow us to move forward to use the state's credit rating. There won't be any action as far as the bond, potential bond goes in July. The next step in the process would be our August meeting where the board would formally vote whether or not to have a bond on the November ballot. So this is just, again, giving the district permission to submit the packet to allow us to use the state's credit rating.
Any questions?
No, I think you did a good job of explaining. I mean, I want more disclosure, more discussing and talking about some of the details that we talk about in these, like we discussed in the workshop and everything else in there, and I think you did a good job. I believe that needs to be added to, other than the fact, just to reiterate that this is proposing keeping everything status quo as far as
Zero increase.
zero increase.
Tying it back to what the board just approved is when you look at all of our debts, and really you kind of break those down. The 2000, there's 4 different debt issues out here, but 3 are tied together. 2014, which was for technology and transportation, sold in 3 series in 14, 18, and 22, and that's by design because you don't. It was an $11 million bond to buy buses and new technology. You don't want to buy everything all at once. You want to stagger it out. So that was by design. That was planned. And then the remaining bond that's listed as a 2015. That's a refinance of the 98, 05, and 06. In big picture terms, the 98 built the middle school. The 05 was a refinance of that, and the 06 bond put the new gym on the high school, the technology and buses, new football stadium, a bunch of other facility improvements. So what would happen is essentially 2.5 mils of the 5 in total would be falling off. A potential bond in November of 23 would allow us to retain that same 5 mil level, that same 5 mil levy, but sell $123 million worth of bonds. We have $123 million in new project, including a field house, multi-purpose center, air conditioning, every classroom, new lighting, new technology, new security, at no increase to the taxpayer. That levy would stay the same, but we'd be able to realize $123 million in new projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. I need a motion to approve the PQA bond application.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, we have support?
Support.
Motion and support, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Busch.
Thank you. I do believe there's one document that needs Mr. Welch's signature that if we could grab right now,
Yep.
we'll send that off to the bond council right away. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to request that we take just a quick recess to do a restroom break before we work through the interviews, and also just to get the room set up to start the interviews. So would you guys, 5-10 minutes, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, yeah, how long do you think?
Let's do,
You could do 10 if we're back.
yeah,
If we're back, we
Yeah.
can start.
yep, let's do 10, sounds good. So motion for that?
I move to adjourn for 10 minutes.
Okay, support? Okay, motion support, any discussion? Okay, great, 10 minutes, so I have 3:47, so
Yep.
at 3:57. The process. So this process is governed by state law. Due to Ms. Dickey's resignation on June 1st, the board office posted the open seat on June 6th after we approved her resignation at our June 5th meeting. And we have 30 days within which the seat must be filled, or else it will be filled by the GISD. Interested candidates had until June 16th at 4 p.m. to turn in their letter of interest. We had 10 candidates apply, 9 which are here in person tonight, 1 which made prior arrangements for Zoom due to out of town. Each candidate will be called alphabetically one by one. They will be asked 6 questions with a time limit of 2 minutes for each question. Questions were selected by each of our board members from the list of the Michigan Association of School Board. If a candidate is not present at the time that their name's called, we will do a final call at the end to see if they have arrived, because we had a couple that were thinking they needed extra time to get here. Following interviews and discussion, the board will take action in item 10.9 to appoint the new board member of Fenton Area Public Schools Board of Education. Okay, so in your packet, Stephanie did such a great job of organizing this for us, but we received this in email, but just as a reminder, the instruction sheet, if you want to refer back to it. We also have a packet for each candidate. So you will have, your name is in parentheses for the question that you will ask to the candidate. You can take notes on this packet as well, and you will assign each question a 3, 2, or a 1 using the rubric here. The rubric is taken from MASB's effective board member characteristics. So along the top, you'll notice kind of the overarching 3, 2, 1, and then underneath are checklist items that are pulled straight from MASB for effective board members. So you can be thinking through those things as each person answers the question. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys each a couple minutes just to look through things, make sure we're all good, ask any last minute questions, and then we'll get started. So take a couple minutes, double check your packets. You'll also notice that in the front of each packet is a copy of all of the letters of interest for each candidate that we received in our board packet. You just have another copy to refer back to. about the packet, and then I'll just go over a few last minute process things. Okay. So, each candidate, as I mentioned, will have 2 minutes to answer each question. That will help us just kind of stay on track through the interviews tonight. Mrs. Jones will help us keep track of that. After each candidate, we will take a couple minutes before calling in the next candidate for you to just using the rubric, tally their overall score on the front of your sheet and jot down any notes before, and then once we have a few minutes to do that, we'll move on to the next candidate. We will repeat this process until all candidates have been interviewed. Then we will take 10 minutes with no discussion, just to organize all of our individual thoughts, personal scores for each candidate, and we will narrow it down to each of our top 3 candidates. If there is a tie among candidates, use your best judgment to select your top 3. At that point, we will take any general comments, and then we will publicly announce our top 3 candidates to be recorded in the meeting minutes. I will be tabulating along with Stephanie, just so we can make sure we have the same results. We will determine which 3 candidates show up on all the lists, or at least show up the most frequently. Then we will discuss the top 3 candidates. Following board discussion, each board member will then select a first choice and a second choice from our top 3. The choices for each board member must be publicly announced and recorded in the meeting minutes. I will tally the results, giving 2 points for each first choice and 1 point for each second choice. The board president will we will then ask for a motion to appoint the candidate with the most points. So that is an overview of the process. That process is taken straight from the Michigan Association of School Boards. Any questions on the process tonight?
Yes, Ms. Brooke, this is gonna be, I think this is obvious, but you're not going to read that to every candidate, you're just gonna let them know how much time they have to answer, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Read this whole thing?
Yeah.
I'm just making sure all of
We
you
know,
know,
okay,
yes,
perfect.
yeah, yeah, because we're the ones filling out the.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Any other questions? If not. Okay. Nicholas, yep, we're gonna move on, because Nicholas Gregory we'll circle back. We will start with Matt Chapman. Go ahead and just put next. I think, this is yellow.
Oh.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Do you go by Matt or Matthew?
Matt.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for your interest tonight. And we all had a chance to review your letter.
All right.
And we will go ahead and we have 6 questions for you. There will be a 2-minute time limit for each question. And Mrs. Jones will just kind of help us keep track of time as we go.
Sounds
Do you
good.
have any questions for us before we start?
I do not.
Okay. All right, well, with that being said, thank you for coming and we will get started. All right, the first question, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
Well, I'm a father of a soon-to-be 4th grader and an 8th grader here at Fenton Area Public Schools. So, not only do I want to ensure my children, receive the best public education, but all children. So that's why I'm interested. My wife is also an educator, so I'm able to see different things going on in the school district and other school districts. So that's kind of sparked my interest in, serving in my community.
Yeah,
qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
Yeah, so I'm a chief information officer for a credit union. So I bring, with me a wide skill set of technology and management skills. So, I think I bring, technology governance and strategy to the board. Also my decision making, data driven type of decisions that I have. Also IT budgeting and resource management, are big focuses for me in my role, which are things that, also apply to you in your role. Technology integration, digital learning, chief information officer, very hands-on with all technology, so definitely, bringing that into the school district, my background there. My information security background, so cybersecurity, data privacy. You see organizations, school districts are frequent targets for, cyber attacks, so bring my knowledge there as well to the, to the board. Collaboration, communication, do that every day. I have to, work with the board at my organization, various departments, my peers at the organization, so that communication, and, I got 250,000 members that, I have to communicate with, so. Those are items that I can bring to the board.
I got the next question. So, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
Yeah, so role of the school board member, envision the education future for the district. So help set that, vision with the superintendent and administration for the district. Ensure that resources, are allocated and aligned properly, throughout the district. One of the main roles is hiring, the superintendent, working with the superintendent, monitor performance, and, advocate, advocate for students, I would say, in, public schools in general.
That would be me. It's a long question, sorry. Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team, and what's your vision for education in this community?
Yeah, so I see myself working well with, the members of the board and the community. Like I mentioned in one of the first questions there, I do that on a daily basis in my job, working with my peers on the executive leadership team, at the credit union that I work for. So, working with the board, definitely no problem. Communication, I'm available 24/7 for my work, so definitely, available for my fellow board members, as needed to communicate with, whether that's email, chat, text message, phone call, I'm definitely always available for, communication to chat with. As far as the vision, I definitely see technology, being a tech person myself, technology is definitely, in my vision, that needs to be there. The school district does a good job with one-to-one devices, but I would love to see one-to-one further down into the elementary level as well for technology. So I don't know where that is on the roadmap, but definitely something, that I'd be interested in seeing.
What are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
So big challenges facing public education. There's definitely a lot of them out there. I mean, there's everything from budget constraints to DEI to, just numerous things facing out there. I think one thing that I see, facing immediately, Fenton, is doing a good job. You're currently meeting all the state standards and, students are at par. But, I think there is gonna be that COVID slide that's gonna happen, and, getting students, to that point, to keep that continued, test scores up are gonna be important going forward.
For your time today.
No problem.
My question is, at times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle this?
Well, for me, it's following, the oath that I would be taking. I mean, as far as following the policy, I can have a differing opinion of, each of you, but it's not my opinion that necessarily matters. It's what's best for the students in the district. So we can have a differing opinion there, but, I might argue for my opinion, but if I lose, I gotta accept, that and move on, so. But, if it comes down to a matter of law or something of that nature, that obviously trumps, whatever my opinion is.
Well, that is the final question. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I have no additional questions for you.
Okay.
All right.
Any last minute burning follow-up questions from something you heard?
No, thank you, Matt, I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I
Yeah, thanks very
appreciate your
much.
time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a couple minutes now to just go over your notes and kind of have a moment to digest and tabulate your thoughts. Well, Rochelle, welcome. Thank you for submitting your letter of interest to the board seat vacancy. We all had a chance to review your letter, and we have 6 questions for you tonight.
Okay.
So just to assist with the flow, we are trying to keep each question to about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Mrs. Jones will assist with keeping time. And then, after that, when all the board interviews are over, we will call everyone back in.
Okay.
Okay? Any questions for us before we start?
No.
Okay. Great, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, Rochelle, why are you interested in serving on the board?
I'm interested because I have children in the district, and I ran for this position last year, and I wanna be good for all the kids in the community. I wanna, when I ran, I didn't know any of the current situations, and I'm not running for any agenda, and I just wanna do what's best for the kids and students in our school, especially my kids too. opportunity to work in the public every day. And my qualities is I am very transparent. I try to do resolutions between everyone, and I'm a very open-minded person. So I wanna listen to our community and everybody else, students, teachers, staff, administration.
Good. What do you see as the role of a school board member?
Being transparent, working with the board members, trying to come together and make resolutions for problems in our community.
Say the same thing to you, Rochelle, sorry, it's a long question.
It's okay.
Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And what's your vision for education in this community?
My vision for education is we have to really focus on education due to the fact that with the national news coming out, there's been a lot of downfall in the schools across the United States in education. So the board, we have to figure out resolutions on doing better things in education, but I feel it's important reading, math, and reading's like my biggest concern because I feel like during COVID, a lot of children fell behind in reading. What was the other part of the question, if you could repeat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with the other members of the leadership team?
Well, I know that all the members might not always agree on things, but I think at the end, we all need to come together as board members and try to find a resolution on everything.
Rochelle, what are the biggest challenges that are facing public education today?
Biggest challenges is, well, I believe from the national test scores that are coming out right now, is that's what's affecting education.
Thank you for your time today, Ms. Evans. At times, you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
I would handle it, you have to follow the policies that are in effect in the district. And I would be putting my views aside when it comes to that.
Any follow-up questions based on anything you've heard from Michelle tonight? Do you have any questions for us, Michelle?
No, but I just wanna thank you guys for giving me this opportunity, and, I just wanna say that the community did vote for me, and I didn't lose by a lot. So I hope you guys will all consider me, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Thanks.
your letter. We've all had a chance to review your letter, and we are going to ask you 6 questions tonight. Mrs. Jones will assist in time. We about 2 minutes per question, just to get through all the candidates.
Understood.
Any questions for us?
I don't think so.
All right. I will kick us off here.
Okay.
Brian, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
Really simple. I mean, honestly, it's for the kids in the community. I think that you're gonna hear that as a resounding answer, at least I hope you would, but, I would like to speak as well to not only me just saying that, but what I've done in the past in regards to being, for going on 18 years as a football coach, here at Fenton. I volunteered to be parking lot security, for the craft show for the last 5 years. I volunteer as a dealer at the FEA Poker Foundation. So I've always tried to be involved with the community and help out with the schools and those sorts of things. But it's as simple as that, here for the kids in the community.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
Well, I did include my resume. I've worked for 22 years at General Motors, and in that 22 years, I was 12 years as operations management. I had 10 years as a labor relations, working with the union and negotiating local contracts 2 times in my career, which is a pretty big undertaking, so I understand working involved with the union. Human resource as well, policy, state and federal law. I'm very in tune and understanding the importance behind those things in regards. So, and just employee relations, right? People relations. People are people, bringing people together and trying to come to a resolve that we can meet on, equal ground, right? Because everybody isn't gonna be right, but we try to find a way to meet in the middle. And I would be remiss not to say I also have 3 kids in the school district. Those 3 kids currently, one will be still in State Road. I'll have 2 in high school next year as a freshman and a sophomore. So I think being a parent in the district is a qualification as well. And I'd be remiss not to make sure that is an important qualification as well.
What do you see as your role as a school board member?
My role as a school board member, well, I think, like I said, the most important thing is you gotta listen to the people in the community and understand what people are truly wanting across the board. It's not about what I want, it really isn't. It's not about, my thoughts or my feelings or my opinions or anybody else's, but really trying to get an understanding of what our community wants and where we want to go. Obviously within state, federal law, and our policies and all those other things that were mentioned earlier that are very important. And I think the piece that's missing, what I would hope to bring, is the transparency. I think it's very important to bring transparency to the board, and I don't think it's done intentionally. Communication is the biggest thing that everybody fails at, right? I mean, in large businesses to small businesses to our own homes. So I just think that we have to have a focus there to help with that transparency and the communication, and I think that's ultimately what I'd help be able to bring to the board.
The audience here has heard it, and I'm going to say it for every candidate. I'm sorry, Brian, because it's a long question. It's a 2-part question, and I'll be more than happy to read any part of it again, too.
All right, appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication, as you mentioned, and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And then the second part is, what is your vision for education in this community?
I think that's a great 2-part question. So I think you gotta have a certain demeanor and a maturity about you, in this role. in order to work with anybody and to respect everybody. As I've said it before, and you've heard me, speak, and hopefully when I have spoken, you've taken me as being very respectful, not trying to take a position necessarily on either side. I want to come with solutions and I want to solve the problem. I don't want to just come with an issue. That's why I'm running. Part of the reason why I'm here today before you is because I'm not going to just sit back and complain about something. Okay, I want to make a difference. I want to be involved with it in the trenches, helping you guys to navigate that sort of thing. But in the end, it's about respect and just understanding that everybody has differences and different views, and it's okay. I mean, I don't have any right or wrong way or view in regards to what people are doing or the individuals that they want to be. So as long as you can come to that common ground and respect one another when you're, having those conversations, that to me is what it's about. So working with the school board members and working with the superintendent is not an issue. It's always about respect and professionalism. And as long as you stay true to that and you're honest, and you operate with transparency, there really is never going to be a problem. You got no issues. And I know I didn't answer the second part of the question, if you don't mind repeating that.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your vision for education in this community?
Well, I will tell you, there's lots of things, right, that I have a vision for when you talk about education, right? But the first thing, that concerns me the most is enrollment dropping. I will tell you that, Fenton is an incredible community. I graduated from Linden. When I sit back and everybody, you wanna know why people kind of are big fans of Fenton? Because they're jealous, because it's an awesome, awesome place, it really is. The field's beautiful, the restaurants are beautiful, the downtown's beautiful. Linden, Holland, nobody has that. They don't have what we have. And, it's not that our people aren't great, our people are amazing, but there's a jealousy to it. And then why is the enrollment dropping? I don't necessarily know, but, one of the things is I would like to see,
Nope, that was your 2 minutes. I'm letting you finish your thought.
Oh, I apologize.
Nope, you're good.
Marketing, I think that we gotta do better marketing to bring people into the community so people really understand what we have to offer. And I'd like to see us grow the district a little bit. I know that we may not wanna be a Clarkston-sized district, but I think that that's imperative to bring people from all diverse backgrounds into Fenton to be part of this wonderful community and this education system that we provide.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes, you're welcome.
What do you feel are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
Well, social media. Social media is poison, it's toxic for all of us. I'm guilty. I think it's the number one reason why, suicide rates are up more than anything. And how do you fix it? I don't really know. But like I said, I'm not gonna sit back and not try to be a part of the solution. I wanna be a part of it, right? I wanna try to tackle it and understand it, and see what we can do. But the other thing is that I think learning from other people's mishaps, large corporations and businesses through this, I think education is getting the secondary piece behind what's already happening in large organizations, because that's what we are. It is a business within reason, it's an organization, it's dealing with people. And I think that we can learn a lot by looking at those cases and things on what not to do. As an example, the hot topics they always tell you, politics and religion, you'll talk about it at your table, right, as an example. It doesn't matter who you're with, somebody's gonna be offended. So there's just certain things that are just tough topics that you gotta stay away from as much as you possibly can, as an example. But I think those are the two biggest things that we're dealing with, and it all stems from social media.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. And I think you touched on this a little in your last question, but we're all asking the same questions of everyone. So at times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
It's really simple. Policy and law. If you don't like the policy, you don't like the law, you gotta figure out a way to go about changing that so that you can operate behind that policy and that law. But I'm gonna go back to the communication of making sure that it's thoroughly explained to the community so they understand why you took the position that you did. Without that communication, people not understanding that we're following behind that policy or that law is a big problem. I will also say that I think it's imperative though that we are following the policies. You can't say in one breath that you're following a policy and the next breath not following a policy that's in writing. And again, I've got a lot of experience behind policy, okay? And, you know, it might be a time that we look at our policy and make sure that it's up to date and it's saying what we need. You shouldn't have a policy that you're not gonna enforce, as an example. You know, take it out altogether, you know, if you need to, so yeah, so those are the big things, but it's really straightforward. Policy in law, state, federal, needs to be followed. If we don't like it, let's try to figure out how to change it. Let's explain it to the people so they understand where you're coming from as a board. And again, like I said, I think communication.
Any follow-up questions for things? Yes.
And I don't know if I don't know the answer to the first part of this question, but the first question I had is, first of all, thank you for your dedication to the school. You're very involved as a volunteer. But I noticed, and you even mentioned today, the football coaching.
Yep.
Are you one of our paid positions for football coaching?
I am, and I'll answer that because I know where you're going. So, and thank you for bringing that up. I'm actually paid and I'm willing to not get paid. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the coaches, and this is the cut on the schools everywhere, they make negative 50 cents an hour for the time they put in for the kids, okay? But this is so important to me that I'll withhold, and I'm not gonna get into the money that I make, because it's, people would probably be like, why you doing it for that money? It's not a lot, I promise you, it's not a lot. But the point is that I absolutely understand and am willing to forego that additional money, and it doesn't mean that I won't coach. I will still be volunteering as a coach because the kids are important to me, and I will not be stepping away from that. I will just withhold the payment from Fenton in order to be a part of the board and still coach.
I just wanted to make sure you were aware.
No, I wasn't. I wanted to bring that up as well, that I was aware of that, because I think, again, I would hope that that shows a lot to you how important this is, that I'm willing to forego money in order for this opportunity, you know, for our kids and our community. That's how important it is.
That's all I have.
Okay. Is that it? Am I off the hot seat?
You are, unless you have any questions for us.
No, listen, I in HR, I sat in your guys' chairs, and ladies, it's not an easy choice that you gotta make, so good luck.
Thank
So
you,
good luck.
Brian.
Yep, you're welcome. Yep. I'm out.
Let's take a couple minutes. We all had a chance to review your letter, and we are gonna ask you 6 questions. Do you have any questions for us before we start?
No, I think I'm all set, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then remind them of the time.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Brew. We are trying to keep answers to 2 minutes per question. If you hear the timer, we'll let you finish your thought, and
Okay.
then we'll proceed to the next question, just to get through all the interviews today.
Absolutely, you got a lot of work to do.
All right, I will kick us off. Mr. Maswell, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
I am interested in serving on the school board, first because I have a son who's in middle school in Fenton. Secondly, because I really believe in supporting excellent educational and personal outcomes for all students, and feel that I can play a role in that. I have quite a background in terms of work with nonprofits, volunteering on boards, et cetera, that I can get into a little bit more later. And I feel like I can contribute quite a bit to this board in terms of steady leadership and support for strategic direction and even fund development.
What qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
So I have 25 plus years experience in nonprofit administration and higher education administration. I have worked most recently, I'm currently philanthropy leader at the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation, so I'm responsible for raising major gifts on the part of the foundation and building the community's endowment. Prior to that, I have been a grants manager at Mont Community College and also the foundation manager at Hurley Medical Center. And so I bring, I think, a great deal of nonprofit experience to the table. In addition, I have remained involved in community. So, you know, besides going on field trips, attending band concerts and all that within the Fenton schools, I've also served on the Fenton and Linden Advisory Committee for the Community Foundation of Greater Flint to decide, you know, what grants and what nonprofits in the area we would support. I have served on the board of the Rotary Club of Flint, served on the Ann Arbor Summer Festival board, been involved in a number of ways in terms of volunteering my time and energies to support the community.
Okay, for our next question, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
Oversight, steady leadership, support for the strategic direction of the schools. You know, of course, I bring in my own viewpoint in terms of what should happen for the schools, and that's primarily around ensuring that students are leaving here well-educated, well-informed, confident in their abilities, able to support themselves and give back to community. And so, for me, those are things that are very important. On the board, I feel that I can contribute in a number of ways. As I mentioned, I do have experience as a nonprofit administrator. I have experience both in terms of in a previous life giving out grants as a program officer at the C.S. Mott Foundation, to writing grant proposals for Hurley Medical Center and for Mott Community College. And so I can help to think strategically about what Fenton schools are doing, how they'd like to move forward, and how we can best position ourselves for the next 100 years. Right? And that really is, that would be my goal, is to not so much look at the past of what we've been doing here in Fenton schools, but to help our current young people be ready for their futures.
Mr. Nazareth, again, I told the other candidates, I apologize, it's a long two-part question, and I'll be more than happy to repeat either part of it for you.
Okay, great.
But working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And the second part is, what is your vision for education in this community?
Okay. How do I see myself working with other school board members and with the superintendent? First, I want to be able to listen. I think that if I don't understand what's going on, I'm not going to be of much help. So, first priority would be to listen, and listen to understand. That might mean asking some questions. Secondly is being open-minded. I have a real strong feeling about the value of groups working together, that when they work well together, that the outcomes will be better than anything I can do for myself. I have a lot of confidence in that. So I'm going to be someone who would work very hard to make sure that we're working well together, and I'm working well with each of you individually. That's very important to me. I think that there are well, the other part of your question was my vision. And my vision really is that Fenton Schools remains the best place for students to go and for families to, you want to attract the city to attract families who want their students to go to good schools. We want Fenton Schools to be the best place for a student to go, and also be a safe place, because I think that's a huge component of being the best. That if you are not feeling safe, if you don't have food, if you don't feel a sense of belonging, if the facilities aren't what they need to be to help support your education and growth and think towards the future, then it's harder to be a successful person later on in life. And so I want to support that direction as much as I can as a board member.
Thank you.
So my question is, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
I've been thinking about that question with respect to the Fenton schools in particular, and I really think that, having safe, well-informed, open-minded leadership is one of the key challenges in schools, because there's so many pressures coming from all different directions. And so being able to understand, and value that open-mindedness and that steadiness, I think is really, really important. I think that student success obviously is paramount, right? And so being able to put students in a position where, again, they feel safe, where they are getting the support, both in terms of material and non-material support that they need to be themselves, be people, to grow and to learn, I think is very important. There's, within this economy and within the environment that we're having post-COVID, I think hiring and retaining staff is a real big issue as well. That is something that is hard across different industries, right? And so the thing about it is, what can you do? You can only control what you can control, and that would be around staff development. It would be around creating opportunities for growth for staff members, teachers and other staff members. And so I think that's something that would be very important. And then finally, facilities. I really think that's, you can see it throughout the state. I work in Ann Arbor. Some of their buildings are phenomenal, others not so much. If you go around Genesee County, the facilities vary. All very important to me to be able to keep top-notch facilities, including technology, so students can excel.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today and for your interest. At times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. If that happens, how would you handle that?
I would follow the law. I don't really have a long answer to that question. I would follow the law. It's very important, because I'm not representing myself if I'm on the board. I'm representing the school district. And it's very important for me to be able to represent the school district ably and as an ambassador in a way that is not going to create harm for the district potentially. So I would follow the law.
anyone have any follow-up questions based on anything we've heard from Mr. Maswell? Do you have any questions for us?
I want to ask people what they feel has been the biggest challenge for the schools within the last couple of years, and not necessarily any political challenges, but sort of what direction you feel the board needs to focus on over the next year or two.
I guess with COVID and everything that's going on with that, just focusing on student achievement, that should be our ultimate goal, is to focus on student achievement. And we've seen that there's been some slipping in scores since COVID, and we've done some things to help with that. We've put a lot of things in place to help, but we just need to keep trying to identify where people are having issues and to try to help them, so.
Yeah, I would say, I would echo that. We've, and there's always room for improvement, but we've been working a lot with our MTSS, which is multiple tiered systems of support. So identifying what students need, what resources or accommodations, and at different levels. And not only from an academic standpoint, but the social emotional piece coming out of COVID, or the behavior piece, to just truly support all students where they're at. So that's a really big thing, and that's something you're never gonna do perfectly, because there's always something to improve on, but that's been a big part of our strategic plan, especially coming out of COVID as well. Great question. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
For submitting your letter of interest. We've all had a chance to review the letter, and we will go ahead and ask you 6 different questions. Mrs. Jones will be keeping time. We're gonna keep each question to 2 minutes. If the timer goes off, then you can finish up your thought before we move on to the next question. All right, I will go ahead and kick us off. Why are you interested in serving on the school board?
Well, so I grew up in Brighton. I'm not originally from Fenton, but I moved here a number of years ago, and I wanted to say too, just in case, I identify as non-binary, so I use they, them pronouns, by the way. So instead of like Mr. Mix, MX is good. But I moved here 8 years ago or so now, somewhere in there, and I just fell in love with the community. I think it's, not to hate on Brighton, but I think it's a little bit better than Brighton. It seems more of a open and diverse community, and I wanted to reflect that on the board, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to really represent the underrepresented populations. I've also always been really interested in my, adult years in civic things, gotten more into politics and making a difference through policy. I'm a teacher, so I figured that a school board and using my educational background was a good way to help further this great community and aid in the continued success.
Skills and experience would you bring to the board?
Well, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher in a neighboring district, which I think in and of itself is a a lot of good experience. I know the ins and outs of the educational system. I have a master's in education as well as an EDS, which is an educational specialist degree. I'm starting a doctorate program, Doctorate of Education, in the fall. So I'm very well educated in education. I have experience in education. I have backgrounds in boards and being on boards. I've been on a number of boards, president, secretary, treasurer, mostly in the nonprofit sector, but so I have experience running boards. I also am just a go-getter, I guess you could say. When I put my mind to something, I like to see it through, and I would like to think that I'm very good at identifying what needs to be done, an overarching goal, I guess, and then the steps to take to get there, and I would say I'm pretty good at accomplishing goals and objectives.
Okay, for your next question, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
Like, what is their role?
Yeah, what would be the role of a school board member?
Policy. Policy is a big one. From my experience as a teacher, I've been on different committees that I've worked with. I've been on curriculum committees and district improvement committees. So we've worked in a board fashion, not with necessarily with the school board, but I have been to a number of school board meetings in my own district, and from that experience, it's all about the what. The superintendent is the how, the school board is the what. So the school board creates the policy. They set an example for the district for one, but create policy, and the superintendent working with the superintendent to enact those policies.
I'm going to apologize to you as I did the other candidates about this being a long two-part question, and I'll be more than happy to repeat either part of it for you. Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? The second part is, what is your vision for education in this community?
I don't think we're gonna get along. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't see it as, I don't see an issue with it at all. I've had experience on boards. I'm the president of a board currently. I'm all about conflict resolution and communicating effectively. I mean, that's the only way anything is gonna be able to get done is effective communication and having respect for each other and working. I think everyone knows, at least on the school board, that everyone knows the reason why everyone's there. It's for the district, it's for the students and staff and the parents and the community. So it's just making sure that, yeah, communication is there and open. And I've never had an issue with the boards that I've been on, but. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Second part is, no, that's fine. What is your vision for education in this community?
I would say that I agree with the mission statement and vision that Fenton has put forth, for sure. I see continued excellence I mean, the district isn't in a point where it could, I don't wanna say it's put, like, be improved immensely. I think the district's done a wonderful job over the past few years. I think it would just be continued excellence with our scholars. Yeah.
Kai, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
Ooh. I would say, I mean, there's a number. The most important things would probably be, what I see right now, in my experience, is navigating the post-COVID learning world. It's incredibly different and difficult than prior. What I see now especially is an immense lack of motivation in students. And I think that rectifying that's probably the biggest thing, is getting students motivated to want to be in school and to want to have success in their lives. And but part of that, is incorporation of technology. That's something that's relatively newer too. Yeah, I would say the post-COVID learning world.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your application and your time today. At times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
I'm going to say there is no handling that. The law is the law. You're about the law. The laws and school policy are there for a reason, and board policies are there for a reason. No matter your personal opinion on a board, you can have your own personal opinion, of course, but you have to abide by the laws and the rules and policies that are in place.
Are there any other follow-up questions that anyone has for Kai? Any questions or comments you have for us?
No. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come in.
Well, thank you very
You're welcome.
much.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you. We will be asking you 6 questions. Mrs. Jones will be keeping time, about 2 minutes per question. When you hear the timer go off, we will let you finish your thought. Do you have any questions for us before we start?
No, good, thank you.
All right. I will get us started. Stephanie, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
I feel like there's a group of parents in the community that are marginalized and not being heard. I feel that it's real important to bring the community together, and hopefully I could do that. I mean, I'm a nurse, I'm a mom. I'm aware of childhood development, so I feel like I understand children's development, what is and isn't appropriate. I'm obviously a parent, so I understand parental concerns, especially concerns in the community right now. That's it.
Thank you.
Stephanie, what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
I've already said, I'm a mom, I'm a nurse. I have a child with a learning disability. I have a child that was oppositional defiant. So I think I've been through it all in terms of kids. I'm relatively patient. I try to be understanding. I try to listen to everybody. I try not to exclude anyone. I just honestly try to be fair. I'm honest. I would consider myself a person of integrity. I speak my mind. I mean, I just don't dance around stuff. I speak my mind. So I would do whatever I could to support the kids of the district. Kids have a special place in my heart, and parents need to be heard. Their concerns need to be heard, and not treated as outcasts. All parents need to be treated equally. All parents' concerns need to be heard. That's it.
Okay, next question is, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
I see the role as doing the best that can be done for the school district to promote the district, to ensure that the district is successful, that it's presented in a positive light to draw families to the district for the education. Make sure that the education is evidence-based. Anything in the buildings is evidence-based and appropriate according to child development.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm gonna repeat this again, and the crowd's heard it numerous times now, I apologize, it's a long question, it's two parts.
Oh,
So if
okay.
at any time you want me to repeat any part of it, just let me know, I'll be more than
You
happy.
can say the first part.
I'll read it in its entirety, and then you can answer it however you'd like, and then I'll be more than happy to answer or reread it. Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And what is your vision for education in this community?
I'm a nurse. I've worked with some pretty difficult surgeons because my background is primarily surgical nursing. And plus, I get along very well with my ex-husband, and you would have to meet him. So, anyways, I feel like I developed skills where I could understand, communicate. You know, if I don't understand what's going on, I will stop and ask, repeat that, say that again. You know, and there's a big difference between feelings and logic, and I'm kind of more of a logic thinker. So just, I think communication, being open-minded, being respectful towards everyone is important. I don't know. What was the second part? I'm sorry.
Sure, absolutely. What is your vision for education in this community?
I think the curriculum needs to be evidence-based. I think we need to compete with other districts in terms of what the kids are learning in terms of reading, writing, arithmetic, like the basics that help kids to be successful and either go on to college or vocational ed choice if that's what they choose. So pretty much making sure that we have good people in the district in terms of like Dr. Busch, you know, good people that are here making the decisions regarding curriculum and things like that. To me, that's really important, is what are we teaching the kids? That's like a priority for me. What are we teaching them? And then the second thing is, are they safe? Like, I would not care to have like an Oxford issue happen in this school. That would be devastating to me. So my priority is, you know, the curriculum and kid safety.
Thank you very much.
So my question is, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
I think it's a shortage of teachers. I think that teachers, I don't know how it's gonna happen, but they need to get more money. I think in order to draw them to be teaching, to be a teacher, excuse me. I mean, my daughter's a teacher, my sister's a teacher. I kinda know what the wages are, and it's really kinda terrible. So I think it needs to be an environment that's welcoming and supportive of the teachers. I know if I didn't feel supported in my job, I would be out of there. And if I also didn't have a certain income and benefits where I could support my family, I would be out of there. So I think, you know, money, I think support, engaging the parents is real important too. I'm a big, I really like the PTO. I think it's great when parents support the teachers that way. You know, help raise monies for their individual classroom projects. I really like that. So, I don't know, that's kind of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for your interest and your time. At times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
I think it's important, ethical, to go with ethics. There's not necessarily right or wrong, but I think there's ethical considerations, like, is what we are doing, is it appropriate in the school in terms of all children? Not just a group of children, but is it appropriate for all children? Are we considering the parents' input, being respectful of the parents? Are we considering developmentally, you know, where a child is at? Obviously, you know, we wouldn't hand a history book to a kindergartner and expect them to read it. So I think it's having reasonable expectations. Child development involving the parents is real important. And being respectful. I think when you don't respect a group of people, you're kind of gonna reap what you sow, unfortunately. So, you know, try to listen. If you don't agree, you know, our former mayor had to say, you know, agree to disagree. So if it results to that, well, then you're gonna have to agree to disagree. But I also am a big one for compromise. I don't believe it's right or wrong. I don't believe it's your way or the highway. I believe that there should be compromises made. You know, if you don't compromise, if you don't reach out to everyone, that's when you're gonna run into huge trouble. And that's all I have to say, and I'm sticking with it.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any follow-up questions for Stephanie based on things we heard? Do you have any questions for us, Stephanie?
No, I just wish you guys the best, and like I said, I'm 100% behind Rochelle, so whatever you decide, it's your decision.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yep, no problem.
How are you?
Oh, cruising along.
Cruising along. It's hard to be at the end of the alphabet, isn't it?
Been there all my life.
Well, we appreciate you coming and thank you for submitting your letter of interest. We will ask you 6 questions. Mrs. Jones will keep time, 2 minutes per question. If the timer goes off, you will be able to finish your thought. Any questions for us before we start?
No.
All right. I will get us started. Scott, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
I have devoted a very long amount of time in my life to education, whether it was when I was in school or higher education, but I also taught for 20 years, 3 years subbing in Linden, 17 years with Fenton, actually Flushing. My daughter is coming to Fenton next year and transferring down in here. And so it's just something I've been an active part about, and you know, what I'm doing right now allows me some freedom to interact and do stuff during the day and looking to kind of be involved. I no longer work 2 jobs, so there's a little bit of free time in there.
Thank you.
Scott, what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
Well, have a bit of a diverse background. Like I said, 17 years teaching, 20 total in education. I have a master's in curriculum and instruction. I have I completed and worked in law enforcement and completed the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy, and currently have spent 8 years working in security. I also have an MBA. I've worked in the financial area realm prior to teaching. So I understand both the business aspect, the security aspect, which is a major issue with schools now, and also the education design and curriculum process, and have experience in all those different fields. So it really brings a very diverse outlook. I'm very used to being on a public stage, having to do security for the Red Wings and the Pistons and concerts. I understand if something goes sideways, national media is already there in my world. So, you know, that kind of pressure, that kind of being the representative for the lead ownership in those situations and making those kind of decisions, you know, it's those kind of qualities allow me to kind of be attuned to both the skill sets that will be coming to us and working under a pressure environment.
Okay, for our next question, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
Well, it's connecting the vision that has been laid out to the implementation. The school board should not be necessarily micromanaging the process, but on the same note, it should be making sure that what is the vision isn't getting lost. If you're making up as you go along, then ultimately the end product is gonna suffer. And that guidance, that adherence and creation of vision is really pivotal in the success of the student at the end of the input. So.
Scott, I'm going to apologize with you as I've done with every other candidate for this being a long 2-part question. I'll be more than happy to repeat either part of it at any time, okay? Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making.
How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And what is your vision for education in this community?
So starting off with the working in a collaborative environment, certainly going through and getting 2 master's degrees, working in law enforcement, going through an academy. You don't do that kind of training without some kind of collaborative situation. My MBA was actually a cohort type of collaborative learning where we actually, the professor didn't facilitate as much as we had to contribute to each other's learning. So just in those environments, let alone working literally in professional sports, and you know, one person cannot get 20,000 people into a building and 20,000 people out and make sure they have a successful environment. It takes helping, working with the 100 security people that'll be under me, as well as the 100 ushers that are underneath another individual, and the concierge and the operations. There's a whole management team that we have to work collaboratively. So every day, it's, you know, meeting with a group about this size, figuring out, meshing all the different interests that everybody has, and finding and zones of control and the expertise that they have, and using that as a source of traction and forward momentum rather than a stumbling block. And I, as my vice president and directors have a tendency to point out, I have a tendency to bring a sense of calm, a sense of de-escalation to environments, and also a sense of where there's a need that I kind of fill in. And I look for, what does the group need from me to communicate? What do I need to help with the facilitating? Leadership is oftentimes looking for what the group needs, not what you want the group to do. And you can't build a consensus without filling in those gaps. I think that covered both parts for you, is that? Because the vision would have been the coming in as kind of a, for facilitating, you have a vision already. And really it's more of an idea of helping the consensus and finding out. I'd be a little presumptuous of me to come in and say, I know what you need and what I can provide. It really would be finding a place within the group and providing from my background what would help to work to everybody's vision.
Thank you, Scott.
My question is, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
Public education? Honestly, it is. Everybody likes to say, why isn't the United States #1 in education? I always kind of cringe when I hear that. I was a special ed student when I went through, severely dyslexic. Didn't let it really hold me back from what I wanted to try to do. The benefit I had in this country is that we're not #1, we educate everybody. And everybody's a student, and everybody gets an opportunity to be what they want. That's the hindrance of the schools that are better than we are around, supposedly, in other nations. You have the opportunity. That creates huge difficulties. It stretches our budgets. It stresses out our teachers. Because we have students in other countries that wouldn't be in front of those teachers. But those students have an opportunity to be something. Those students at some point might be sitting in front of us in the future, interviewing for a board spot. So that's really where it comes down to is we have set this idea of an American dream in front of everyone. And we've set the idea that we're going to provide education for everybody. And that in itself is the greatest challenge that we face, is living up to those two dreams.
be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
Well, that's something that basically I've run across in lots of careers. When I work in a financial institution, it's something sometimes you really want to give somebody a loan, and it's not good for the group that you work for. In law enforcement, you feel bad sometimes about the person that you're arresting, but on the same note, it's what it is. Representing the Illages and the Red Wings and the Pistons, there are times that I've got to tell somebody they have to leave. I don't care that they have season tickets or they paid, you have to go, and they might not be able to come back for another year or so. And you feel bad for the people they're with a lot of times. And you don't really want to do it, but it's what's required, it's what's necessary. And so there's some times that you have to balance that, and it doesn't mean you can't be empathetic for what you would like to do, but in the framing of the question, if you're legally required to do something, then that kind of is where you're stuck on that. Now, there are ways to accommodate or to be empathetic, or resources that you can send somebody in a direction and exploring those options for them, so that they see the nature of how much you care and how much you want to see them succeed and where they can fulfill those opportunities. It is going the extra mile, it's plussing it, as Disney liked to put it. But on the same note, there are certain hindrances that you have, and certain things that you can do or you can't talk about, or you can as a teacher or as an administrator. And you have to recognize the fact, again, it goes back to the idea. As the board, you're the arbitrator of the vision. And unless the vision needs to be changed, you've committed as a group to that idea, and you need to facilitate that within the law.
Any follow-up questions for do you have any questions for us?
Not at this time. Obviously, if anything goes forward, there'll be. So, but at this point, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I appreciate the opportunity to put my hat in the ring and show some interest in where my student will be going next year. And appreciate the opportunity to meet all of you and see where I'm bringing her to.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your letter of interest, Mr. Younger. Would you like to go by Andrew or Andy?
Andy's just fine, either one is fine.
Well, thank you for submitting your letter of interest. We will ask you 6 different questions. There will be about 2 minutes per question. Mrs. Jones will keep time. If you hear the timer go off, we'll let you finish your thought before moving on to the next question.
Thank you.
Any questions for us?
Nope.
All right, well, I will kick us off. Andy, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
I think my biggest motivation is that I am currently a parent, and I believe that our children deserve the best possible education that they can get. And we've been very happy with the education that they've had so far. I think there's a lot of great teachers, great things in place that make our school a very appealing one, and I want to see those things continue, and I want to make sure that we are continuing to change with the time. I know that our vision as a school is to prepare our kids for an evolving world, and I think that we need to be able to evolve with that.
Thank you.
I believe that the shortest answer to that is I know a little about a lot of things. I really take a very broad interest in a lot of different subjects. I personally am I come from a family with educators in my background. My mother was a teacher, grandmother. I have a fairly eclectic range of personal interests from sports to arts to music, and I think that and the other thing that I have, again, sort of in that knowing a little about a lot of things, I tend to know a lot of people in the area, and I personally love to gather input and wisdom from people of very different backgrounds. So, and I think that really is important for me to inform decisions that I make, and so I value other people's decisions, or not the decisions, the backgrounds and opinions on things, and I think that is an important leadership style as well, to take other people's expertise and experiences into account. That helps me inform a decision. I am someone who has been around long enough to answer the question of, what will I do with the algebra that I learned? I've used it many times, all those things. I think that the education that we receive in high school does end up paying off and get applied in so many ways. And I personally am also a firm believer in education. I'm an undergraduate with a master's degree as well, so it's something that I think is very critical to many different people, or to all of us, and but just in different ways. Thank you.
Okay, next question is, what do you see as the role of a school board member?
School board member, as in any board, is really focused on governance. I don't think it's our role to get into the weeds as a board member. It's to hire and advise the superintendent, and really then also be an ear to the public, and listen to input from our constituents as well. I think the other role is to really help create a vision, a long-term vision, but then it's not our role to necessarily get too much into the weeds on how some of those things are. I think also financial oversight is very important, and helping decide how we spend our money and what's the most effective way. Again, with the vision and strategic plan in mind.
I don't know if this will be the last time that I have to apologize. Again, a long question, two-part.
Sure.
I'll be more than happy to
Try and remember.
Well, I'll be more than happy to read any part of it again for you if you need to. Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And what is your vision for education in this community?
So the first part is how working with other school board members, and in my experience on boards and committees, I think it's really important to get to know each other individually and kind of understand understand how we tick and and even how we think. An example is I'm on the nominating committee for a director of music and arts at our church, and we actually read a book together, which was amazingly constructive in getting to know how my counterparts thought and what they brought to the table just by reviewing and discussing the book. Not that I suggest we do that, but those are things that I think are really important to understand what not only how people think in a group, but also priorities as well. And so I think that then helps me understand how do I fit into either support or try to influence if I feel very passionately about certain things. I also think it's important to pick battles, and so I mean a victory here might end up not necessarily ending get us in the right direction for larger goals. So and the role of vision for education. Thank you. That was the second question. I think that my vision is that we provide a place for students of all abilities and backgrounds to feel comfortable to not just become themselves, but to explore what kinds of skills that they either that they have and develop them, or discover new ones. And same with becoming adults. I mean, I think that's we can't take full responsibility for everything in a child's life, but we can certainly influence what they learn and what their horizons are from an educational and professional career standpoint.
Andrew, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges facing public education is of such a wide set of expectations, very varying sets of expectations of what is expected of a teacher, what is expected of a school, and I think that some of those are unfair expectations. I think some are, and I think that then schools become an easy scapegoat for other people who are unhappy with how things are. But I think also the other thing I would say is I think that if I'm being honest, schools are always in need of more money. I think that's something that I personally feel like education should not be subject to sort of market economy dynamics, and that there are opportunities that some places have that others don't, and I believe that a big part, especially in public education, is ensuring that people get a level playing field, and that's not easy to do, and it takes a lot of individual attention and care, and that's hard. That's one of the big challenges, is to fund and provide the resources to do that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and interest. My question is, at times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as trustee. How would you handle that?
I think that the law and policy, the letter of that law really is that has the final word. If things are written and put in place either at the municipal level, state level, or within the school district itself. And so I think that is that's kind of the simple answer.
questions you have for us?
You know, I know that you have, I'm very impressed with the strategic plan that will go through 2027, and I know that, you know, facilities are a part of it, student care, you know, with the four kind of components of 4 factors of the strategic plan. Is there one that you see as sort of the more immediate priority right now?
Right now, myself personally, and I know we listen to all voices here, but I would say right now, my main focus is facilities, and making sure that we have the resources to implement the changes to the facilities that we need to do based on the study that we just conducted, so that means the bond and the phone.
Yeah, for me, it's twofold. The facilities is a huge need, to make sure we have the resources that we need and to stay competitive with our neighboring districts. But it also came up in another interview, I think the student achievement and academic focus, and I had mentioned multi-tiered systems of support. So just really identifying what all students need to move forward and be successful is gonna continue, something we're never gonna get perfectly, but always something to be working towards. Yep. Anything else? All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you all, I really appreciate the time as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, can you hear us?
I sure can.
All right, good. Well, thank you for joining us from the airport. We are gonna ask you 6 questions. You'll have 2 minutes for each question. Mrs. Jones behind me will be keeping time. When the timer goes off, we will let you finish your thought. Any questions for us before you begin?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank everyone there for making this accommodation.
Well, we are glad you could join us. Real quick, do you want to go by Nick or Nicholas?
Oh, Nick is fine, thank you.
All right. Well, I will get us started, Nick. All right, Nick, why are you interested in serving on the school board?
That is, I think, the most important question, and I'm glad that you asked. And I'm hoping that there may be a little delay in when I'm talking, but I'm hoping everyone can hear me okay.
Yep.
There are a few reasons that I'm interested in being on the school board. I think first and foremost, I believe that for me, it'd be an awesome opportunity to learn with others and to work in a collaborative spirit for what is the ultimate goal of our students, and making sure that we always keep students and families at the center. I've lived in Fenton for almost 23 years. My wife and I have raised our family here, and I'm a very proud member of this community. I'm passionate about not only our community, but our schools. And for me, it's an opportunity to also share some of the skills and the learning that I've done from a K-12 educational experience that I've had professionally. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that for 18 years, I felt privileged and honored to be a member of Fenton Area Public Schools as an employee. And because of those opportunities and what I was able to experience both as an employee and now as a community member, I feel like I've had many advantages in my own life because of my connection to Fenton Area Public Schools. So for me, it's about being part of something that's special, being part of something that means a great deal to me personally, means a great deal to my family. And I've spent a lot of my life involved in being civically engaged and trying to find those spaces where I can be part of something positive. So there's a lot there, but ultimately I want to be part of something that I believe in, something that I know is important. And let's be real, the schools and the school district, even beyond the $39 million budget, is to me the heartbeat of the entire community. And to have that responsibility and opportunity to help as part of that leadership would be a privilege.
Thank you, Nick.
Nick, what qualities, skills, and experience would you bring to the board?
My apologies, I believe, did you ask what skills and experience I would bring?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the skills and experience I would bring, I think one of the most important skills is I'm interested in being part of something, part of an organization, part of a team that moves forward. I have a lot of experience in K-12 education. I spent 18 years as a secondary teacher. I am now an elementary administrator. In terms of experience and skills, I think depending on certainly what the board is seeking, I think my interest and ultimately my goal to keep students at the center of everything we are doing as a board, to keep students and families front and center in our constituents, to me is critical. I also, it's a little bit challenging not being there to be able to connect with others. I think that connection and that rapport that we build amongst each other on the board, and then that ability to connect back out to our families, to engage with our families and with our community, and ultimately as well with our central office. We have, in my view, some exceptionally talented people involved with Fenton Area Public Schools, and I think the more that we're able to pull together, and for me to be a part of that, I have a lot of experience, working across people with very different ideas and views on things, and I think ultimately, if the vision's the same and we're all looking to keep kids first, we have leadership in place, and we have the know-how on the board. I've looked at the subcommittees. I followed the strategic plan very closely. We have a lot of really positive things to keep building on. So my goal ultimately is I'm a learner. I'm curious. I think I would have a lot to learn and always will. And that's, I think, a strength of mine. I'm eager to keep learning and see how I can contribute.
Thank you.
Nick, the next question's gonna come from me. You probably can't see my face, but you probably prefer that anyway, so we'll just go with that. What qualities, oh, that's not me, that's you. I'm on the wrong page. Hold on, it's the last one. I got it right 9 times out of 10. What do you see as your role as a school board member?
I think my role as a school board member would be number one as a learner and a relationship builder. I think those two qualities and those two things would be critical. I am familiar with the different positions on the subcommittees. Ultimately, you know, I understand there's a lot of different areas. I think in the collaborative spirit of working with the board, you know, I would have to learn what those specific roles would be. I definitely have a lot of interest in, you know, weighing in and learning more about school policy. I did see the part about curriculum and learning, of course. I do have a lot of experience in those areas. But in a broader sense, you know, I think it takes work and it takes a sincere curiosity to be a good board member. And I think that responsibility is serious. I think it's, when you're trusted to be part of a team and part of a board, I think that is something that, for me, I would take very seriously. You know, ultimately, there has to be a willingness and an eagerness to not only work together, but to work toward progress. To work toward figuring out and moving forward on, you know, whatever situation it may be, whether it's dealing with budgets and any other matter of things. There has to be a collaborative spirit, and that's something that I think in a broader sense would have to be a part of any new member's role. You know, in terms of K-12 education, as I had mentioned, you know, I know that as a Fenton teacher, to be supported by the Board of Education and to feel supported by the superintendent, as I have always felt that way, quite frankly, really gave me a lift. As a community member, I know how important that support is, not only for teachers and staff, but I think families want to be not only engaged, they want to be supported, they want to share in the mission, in the goals, and I think it has to be a living, breathing mission. And
Hey, Nick, real
those are
quick.
things that I want to be a part of.
Okay, perfect. I don't think you can hear the timer, so I just wanted to give you your.
No, I appreciate that.
Yep.
Oh, was that the time? I assumed that was the time, right?
Yep.
Can you hear it going off in the background?
Can you
You might
hear?
have, you might have to wave a hand to show
Alright,
me the timer.
I'll raise my hand.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Welch has the next question.
Nick, this is a 2-part question for you, and I'll be more than happy to repeat either part at any time when you're answering. Working effectively with other school board members and the superintendent requires skills in communication and decision-making. How do you see yourself working with other members of the leadership team? And what is your vision for education in this community?
I'll take the second part first, because I think that is, they're both critical components of being a good board member, and that is something I would strive for. I think, you know, simply being on the board for me is not where my heart is. I want to be part of a board and to be a good and an effective board member. So the vision that I hold for our students and for our families really comes back to making sure we're engaging our students and we're giving every single student, each student, the opportunity to be successful. And that can look different across K-12 education, but I think every student not only deserves, but it's our obligation, our moral obligation even, to make sure that every student can access the best education that we can provide. And I know the quality of that education is exceptional and has potential to be even better. So that's number one. We also need to be partners with our families and work cooperatively with all of our families to make sure that they know they're supported, that our families understand what resources are available, and you know how we can deliver for families. That's the ultimate goal. There's a huge component of this too that has to do with the greater community and has to do with all of our employees. that's spanning all levels. I mean, when you're dealing with a huge organization, the heartbeat of a community, a $40 million budget, we have employees crossing all kinds of spans, both educational professions and otherwise. I think all those folks need to be not only supported, but to know they're part of something special, and that they're valued. I think I have something that I've fallen to kind of say quite a bit and work with quite a bit in my own professional life. It's never delay gratitude. Never delay gratitude. And I think there is a lot of gratitude to be had. So that's the vision part. Is that the 30-second warning, or is that I'm done?
That's your 2 minutes. Yep. That's your 2 minutes.
I'll come back to the communication piece then, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, my question is, what are the biggest challenges facing public education today?
Well, that is a great question. I'm going to touch on the communication piece really quick because I know that's a huge part of it from the last question. That ability to communicate, I think most of the time is best in person or verbally, and I can't stress enough that the communication among, with board members and with the superintendent and central office staff, understanding those roles, because the board is ultimately dealing with policy. And we've hired very talented people to run the day-to-day operation. The biggest challenges in public education, I think there's several. I think one big part of it is, are we meeting the social, emotional needs of our students and our staffs? Are we working to build their capacity? Have we placed an emphasis on mental health, not just awareness, but also the ability to meet those needs and to get professional training? I think professional training is critical. I understand, budgets and the timing of budgets is tricky in Lansing. I know that from my own experience. And those aspects are always gonna play in as well. But ultimately, the bottom line is, are we able to meet our students' needs? And that's all of our students. And that goes across the spectrum from special education needs to even, sometimes even greater need. To have a community-based school that really honors the individuality of our students and also what they need, what our students need. I don't know what kind of time I have left. I didn't see that. I don't want to overstep.
We're good.
Yeah, you're good on that question.
Yep, there's.
We got one more.
One more question, but I don't think you can see me either. My question is, at times you may be caught between legitimately opposing points of view. There may be a difference between your personal point of view and the policy or law that you're required to uphold as a trustee. How would you handle that?
I think there's a lot of factors. Number one, privacy and confidentiality, and taking the role seriously is number one. I think what we deal with as a board, obviously there's a public setting and there's a need for transparency, but I do think we have to respect one another, respect other points of view. I think ultimately, what we're working toward is a vision. And if the greater vision is clear, I think my role, anyone's role, is to really sit back and learn too. I'm gonna ask good questions. I'm gonna wanna learn from other points of view. And I think the number one aspect for me is permission to change your mind. As I learn more, and I experience this regularly in my professional life, seeking new information and seeking data and learning from experts, I wanna learn more. And I need to have permission to change my mind and be able to grab on to some new ideas and ask good questions, and also be challenged. I want to be challenged. I want to work on a team that's really robust and serious about making progress. And a lot of that has to come back to listening and a mutual trust, a mutual respect with board members and the community. They trust us. That's a huge responsibility. That putting your trust in a board of education for something that's as critical and as important as something that every one of our families is touched by, that's significant and that is important. You have to earn that. You keep that by doing things the right way. Decency is always gonna be important.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions for Nick? Mrs. Jewell has a follow-up question for you.
Hi, Nick.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you know me very well, but I was an educator too, so as I'm listening to you, I could tell that you are in education, and you mentioned earlier that you, so you were, a member here as an educator at Fenton, right? But you did say that you are now an administrator. I'm just curious, I know how busy administrators can be, and you had said all the right things. I'm just curious why you didn't jump into this kind of a position maybe in the last election or prior to now, because you sound like you could bring a lot of, experience to the table, and I'm just really kind of curious about that. And why now and why not then?
Yeah, I apologize if I cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I have been interested in for some time. My own mother was on a school board for several years, so I've been able to learn from her experience. I think the why now part for me, this is something I thought about leading into the next election that is about a year and a half from now. In terms of why now, to me, this is the best time, not just for me personally, but my passion and my enthusiasm, right now is a space where I feel like I do have that time and energy, not only to give, but I'm kind of in a place now professionally as well, where I have rounded out some of my professional goals and in many ways learning about education from K-12 entire experience. I've done a lot of secondary. So I feel like now I feel like I even have more to offer, quite frankly. And I also feel like at this point, when I look at the strategic goals and I know the community quite well, it really does line up with where my values are, and where I feel like I'll be challenged to keep kind of growing my own, not only my own ideas, but learning from others. And I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully I answered that question. I probably should add too, in disclosure, I do have 2 children in the district. Now one moving into the middle school. We're finished with elementary. It's kind of a sad rite of passage that many people have already gone through. And then I do have a child entering the high school. But I've got to be honest, I'd be invested, even if my kids were through with school. That's kind of how I'm wired. I'm all in.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
I do have a couple. I guess one question I have is, what are the qualities you're seeking in a board member? Beyond, I know there's probably some obvious ones, but what are the qualities that you're seeking, and what are the priorities? Oops, that's a good question.
But we're just taking turns
We're just
answering.
we're just
So I was
seeing
just
who
saying
wants to take
to
it.
jump at it.
Well, it's a heavy lift, but, I guess to sum it down to a simpler question, what are the priorities in terms of the needs you have moving forward as a board?
Well, I think personally, and I'm only gonna speak on behalf of myself, personally, I feel like it's getting somebody in here that can help us get over the hump on a lot of different issues. Obviously, some issues that are at hand right now, and then forward thinking, those that are gonna be and could be coming down the pipeline, because it's an ever evolving situation that we're dealing with, and finding people that can be a part of this group that, one, have experience working within this type of collaborative environment, but having an open mind to be able to look at things from many different perspectives, as well as what we've found to be lacking as a board, communication traits and being able to communicate properly out there and get the word out, so that we're, we're well versed within the community as well, and they're not constantly guessing about what we are wanting or what we are doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that ability to adapt and build relationships is, I'm glad to hear that. I think that's something that I'm very serious about. I do have one other question. I don't want to hold up your process. Is there a plan in place for how the current subcommittees are structured, or is that cross that bridge when we get there type of scenario?
Yeah, so, as far as the makeup of the subcommittees?
Yeah.
So, yep, that's a great question. Every July, we kind of do an interest inventory, and then, as the board president, I will look at those and work with the superintendent to assign subcommittees. And we take into consideration skill sets, expertise, if anyone has a conflict of interest to be on one committee or another. So all of that weighs into who makes up those three, but they change on a yearly basis.
Okay, and I understand that's aligned with the strategic plan and the goals set out.
Yep.
All right, yeah, no, I think it is really well defined when you look at it, and just based on my experience at board meetings and so forth. Well, I don't have any other questions. I can't reiterate enough that I'm a proud member of this community, and I'm proud to have been a part of the school district in the past as an employee, and I wish you luck with whichever direction you go, and I know it's a serious endeavor, and I'm really grateful that you've all made the accommodation to listen to me and see me at an airport.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Now that we have had the opportunity to finalize next, I want to just give you a few reminders. So at this point, we will take 10 minutes. If we don't need the full 10 minutes, that's fine. I'll kind of just see where we're all at. But at this time, no discussion during this point. We're just organizing our individual thoughts of the 9 candidates that we heard from. Adam Hazlitt did not show, so we did circle back, and still as of now has not shown, so we will move forward with the process. As you are finalizing your thoughts of the 9 candidates we heard from, you will narrow it down to your top 3. If there is a tie score among your candidates, use your best judgment to narrow it down to 3. And then from there, we will announce our top 3 candidates, okay? And once we have those results, we will determine which candidates show up on all the lists or the most frequently before we have any official discussion. So I will, at the end of discussion, I'll remind you guys of that again, but right now, we're just taking up to 10 minutes to look through all of our packets, finalize your notes and thoughts, and pare it down to your top 3.
You have a score sheet too, in each of your folders to write your top 3 down on.
So you have a sheet in your folder. So you're just focusing on the top portion right now. Okay, any questions? All right. Okay. All right. So, we will each, announce our top 3. So Stephanie will help me tabulate, so I'll have a copy here, and she will have a copy as well. Again, we're not discussing individual candidates at this point. We're trying to narrow it down Any general comments before we start?
These don't have, I'm sorry, Jim.
You go first.
These don't have to be in order, they're just
Correct.
three people.
Yep,
So-
you don't have to list them in any particular order, you just,
Okay.
your top 3 out of the 9.
Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna
Good
ask that
question.
as well.
Yep, no particular order, yep. Okay. So that being said, Ashley, who are your top 3?
Patrick Naswell, Andrew Younger, Kai Orvis.
Mike.
Brian Elchingham, Andrew Younger, and Nick Gregory.
Dana.
Andrew Younger, Patrick Naslow, and Nicholas Gregory.
Matt.
Brian Eltringham, Nicholas Gregory, and Rochelle Edmonds.
Renee.
Michelle Edmonds, Brian Eltringham, Nicholas Gregory.
I had, Andrew Younger, Matt Chapman, and Patrick Naswell. Okay, so I'm going to take a moment to tally these up. Alright, Stephanie, just so I can compare notes, are you still telling?
Yeah, I am. I have a tie for, I have 4 candidates. You as well?
I have 4.
I
4 as
have
well. I have,
Nicholas Gregory with
and
4,
and Andrew Younger with 4,
and Andrew Younger with 4.
and then Patrick and Brian with 3.
Correct.
Is that what you have?
Yep.
Okay, so, in the event of a tie per MASB, we can take 4 candidates to discussion. So, we can take Brian, Nick, Patrick, and Andrew to discussion.
So there was, you said 2 were tied with 4 and 2 were tied with 3, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Will we only take top 2?
So we'll narrow it down to those 4. So I will list those out for you right now. So, the top 4, we have, Nicholas Gregory and Andrew Younger had 4. And then, Brian Eltringham and Patrick Naswell had 3. Okay, so take a moment and, if you want to look through those 4 candidates' packets. Alright, so at this point, we'll open it up for discussion on, the four that we have narrowed it down to: Nicholas, Andrew, Patrick, and Brian. Anyone wanna kick us off?
Sure. I actually had all four of these, and I had three of them tied. And then I took one of them out just because I just felt that Mr. Naswell, with having a spouse in the district, we've already got a couple people with spouses in the district, it's gonna make it difficult for us to vote on things possibly. Have to have everybody that has a spouse in the district would have to, you know, recuse themselves from voting for contracts and that type of thing, which would only leave us with four. And then anything in that line, we'd have to pass, what, 3-1 in that case if we have four?
Correct.
So we'd have to get the four remaining people to have a 3-1 vote in order to pass something. So all things being equal, that's why I left Mr. Eltringham and Mr. Younger in there. But I felt that Nick was, he was in first place for me. So, but the other three were tied, and they were all solid candidates. So.
Ashley?
My order differed. Mr. Naswell was my top candidate. I felt I did consider the conflict, but we have other board members with the same conflict. And for me, Mr. Naswell, I did not know him prior to this interview, and I thought he did a very good job of articulating how his experience tied to the board purpose, the board goals. He has experience with Mott College, which also operates with the board. That stood out to me. And then his experience in grant writing really stood out to me. Closely followed was Andrew Younger. I thought his similar, he had the breadth of knowledge, because we want people with experience in education, but we also want people with experience in policy and community relations. And I think we already have, you know, some business type voices on the board that would lend itself more to Mr. How to say Brian's last name, I apologize, but Elgingham. He's more of the business HR perspective, and I think just bringing a breadth of knowledge, experience that, I want to use the word diverse, but from a diverse knowledge base, not the, you know, diversity part, but having that knowledge in all those different areas where Mr. Naswell said, you know, I've worked with Hurley, I've worked with Mott, I've worked with all these different things, and he really tied it into how it would impact the board. So that outweighed the conflict for me, because I had that same analysis. And I just want to say, I will say that our fourth person, Nicholas Gregory, was my fourth, and my third and fourth were tied as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. When I just have to say that I don't know if anybody else got as many emails as I did, but I think the fact that we don't even have Rochelle Edmonds on this list is troublesome, because I feel like we've already spoken loudly without speaking, to our community about not listening to them. Rochelle very well could be sitting in this seat right here. I only beat her by like not even 0.03%, if you look at the total votes. And I know it doesn't have to work that way. I mean, it's not like who's next in line. I don't see it as that. I just see for the time that I've been on the board, we have not done a really great job of listening to our community overall. So she was at the top of my list for that reason. Because I guess I feel that a vote is a sacred thing, and I have been extremely anxious about this evening because, and I've told some people, I've had conversation with you about that, because the community spoke. I have no more of a right to be in this position than her. I mean, she beat out incumbents of this board. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that out loud at this meeting. And I was the one who asked Nicholas the question that I asked, because being a teacher myself and hearing that he is an administrator, he has an extremely busy job. So I was just curious to know why he never threw his name in the hat before, because I don't know that he'll have a lot of time to give to the board. He obviously answered all the questions correctly because he's an educator and he knows a lot about what we do. I feel myself being a teacher, I could answer those questions that way because it's what we do. So I guess I thought Mr. Eltringham was extremely polished in his interview. He said a lot of the right things, and I think that he is representing, he's been a representative of this community in a variety of ways. He told us he's done he's been a coach. I thought it was interesting that I didn't know you had to have security at the state road crime feature.
It's the best job. Save the back door of the newspaper.
I didn't know that all of us crafters were that.
It's rowdy.
Yeah, but just he's been around. He has children in the district, and I feel he brings, as a candidate, someone that just has a lot to say, and that I don't feel like he just all of a sudden appeared because we had this opening. I think he's been around, and I was just extremely impressed with his answers. So he was at the top of my list, had it not been for Rochelle and me feeling very much so that I needed to listen to the community. So Rochelle was my top pick and Brian was my second. Nick said all the right things, but I'm concerned that I'm just not sure why he never threw his name in the hat. Of course, I think he should come to the top of his answers because he has the knowledge base, being a teacher himself and an administrator, that, I mean, interviewing is a really difficult thing. And I'm sure that a lot of the people that were interviewing were nervous. I would be. But I thought it was interesting too. I don't know if I was getting tired, but I was keeping really good notes, but I looked back at my very first candidate and I thought I was maybe a little too critical because, you know, it was the very first candidate that we listened to. So I really tried to think about that overall in the end, but I just feel really strongly that I wanted to say those things about Miss Edmonds, and I know a lot of you know that I did run a campaign with her. It is not for that reason that I put her at the top. It was strictly that I feel like in just this short amount of time that I've been on this board, 6 months, I just feel like we have not really done a good job listening to the community as a whole. And I personally had almost 20 emails about her and the people saying that they felt like she should be at the top of this list. So since she's not, I really think that Brian should come to the top if he was on many of our lists.
I appreciate those comments. Rochelle was on my list for many of the same reasons you had as well. I don't know her, other than passing. Other than I thought that, you know, she had a really good showing in the election, and there was a lot of support out there, and I thought that warranted something in my mind. That's why she made my list, quite honestly. Brian and Nick obviously were very well spoken. They both made my list as well, and I think they were really well spoken in two entirely different directions. And maybe not necessarily directions, that might be the wrong way, but the way they went about explaining things. You know, full disclosure, I have relationships with both of them for a long time now at this point. And I think either one of them bring an awful lot to the table. Nick was an exceptional teacher, coach, and now I'm quite certain as an administrator where he's at. And Brian brings an immense amount of knowledge from the human resources and conflict resolution, which, you know, really kind of resonates with me. And I also took into account with Brian, in full disclosure, Brian took the opportunity to disclose maybe some areas that he felt he had changed in participating in some of the things that we've done, from maybe where he started to where he might be now. And I kind of took that into the weight of what I was putting in there. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I heard that come out through what Brian was sharing in his interview. I thought he was well spoken in a lot of ways. The one who came out on top for me was Andrew Younger. I went back and also looked at the letter of interest, and I think just thinking through, which I actually had a couple ties. I mean, Andrew, Patrick, Nicholas, they all very well spoken. And I think taking into consideration with Andrew and Patrick kind of coming out ahead on mine compared to Nick, I think Nick had all the right things to say. He interviewed very well. But I think the experience in the nonprofit world, or Andy's experience being the executive director of the chamber, he has the ability to build strong relationships with people. It offers a different skill set to the board. Renee and I are both teachers, so we have an education experience on the board. Mike, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at you. I'm sorry. Newest retired teacher. I am so sorry.
That's all right, that's all right.
So three educators. Please forgive me for that. I feel awful.
That's fine.
3 educators sitting on the board. So that was, when I was weighing kind of the ties, that was something for me. I think he interviewed extremely well and had a breadth of knowledge about what it would take to be a good board member, how a school runs, how a board needs to govern. I think Andrew and Patrick also have experience sitting on other boards. Andrew, he sits on the FIM board, and Patrick has a lot of nonprofit experience, and he listed numerous boards that he has sat on as well. So those are the reasons why I came to my top candidates.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of echo what you said. The top 4 that I had were Patrick, Andrew, Nicholas, and Brian. Brian was a tie for me. But the 2 that rose to the top for me were Andrew Younger and Patrick Nasville, just because of their experience with various boards. I think, we have a lot of experience sitting around this table, a lot of professionals. The area that I believe that these candidates can help us with the most is maybe that other perspective of being on various boards that can help where maybe we don't have that experience. We're very fortunate because we had some awesome candidates that were interested in becoming part of this board. But that was really the reason why the two came to the top for me. It was just their previous experience sitting on other boards and the perspective that they could bring.
Just have a follow-up comment. You know, you got me thinking in kind of the negative of going first, but that board experience is really key because we will now have 4 people that have been on the board for less than a year. So having that ability to understand how boards function and how boards operate and what their role is really important. And looking back at my notes, they both got 3s for me in that area. Like they get how the board operates in a way and how our role is oversight and not as much micromanagement. And that's part of, I think, what should be in our decision.
And I do understand the perspective of obviously a candidate that ran in an election that was the next in line, if you will, in the election. We have dealt with that in a previous appointment. I can't remember what year it was, but one of our incumbents that ran and lost his seat did not get reappointed. And we appointed another member to the board. It's unfortunate, but yeah, but we have had it happen in the past. Yeah.
It's a tough choice. A lot of great interviews, a lot of great candidates. Can you guys can you please keep it down while we're trying to discuss? Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? All right, so, at this point, we have these 4. We will go around and give our top 2, but in this instance, order does matter. So give your first choice first. That individual will be awarded 2 points for being a first choice. And then follow that with your second choice. That individual will receive 1 point for a first choice. Second choice. It's getting late. Yeah. All right.
We have to give 2 choices.
Yeah, we gotta give our top 2. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Ashley, first choice.
Andrew Younger.
Second choice.
Patrick Maswell.
Mike, first choice.
Nick Gregory and Andrew Younger second.
Dana, first choice. Andrew Younger. And second choice, Patrick Maswell. Matt, first choice.
Brian.
And second choice.
Nick.
Renee, first choice. Brian, second choice. My first choice is Andrew Younger. Second choice, Patrick Madswell. was your total for Andrew?
7.
Patrick? I had
3.
7 for Andrew as well. Patrick, I have 3. Nick? 4 as well. And Brian? 4. So our candidate for for appointing tonight will be Andrew Younger with 7 points. So our candidate with the highest score has been determined. So at this point, we will invite all the candidates back in for item 10.9.
Yeah, we don't matter, thanks. You won't get my vote on the millage, toodaloo.
Community doesn't matter to you guys.
You guys have really screwed up this time. We're going to every paper.
You are entitled to your say-so when you write on there and speak, not when you're running all the rules out.
Well, we do.
Heidi thinks it's funny. Are you leaving?
You can stand or find an empty seat, whatever you want. I know you've been sitting a long time.
You guys can sit here. Go ahead and sit here.
Oh, all my stuff's.
You don't even have to go back.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, you guys are doing good.
I think there are enough for us right here.
Yeah, sit there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, is that everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cole. So first of all, we'd like to thank all of our candidates for taking the time to apply for the open board seat. It was wonderful to see so many of you come out and care about our students, our FACS school and community. And after many wonderful interviews, and I thank you for your patience in sitting in there as we deliberated, but I truly, truly want to thank all of you for your dedication and your time that you put into interviewing tonight. But I would like to get a motion to appoint Andrew Younger to the Fenton Area Public School Board of Education. We have a motion, we have support. Motion and support, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Welcome, Andrew Younger.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll move on to board announcements. We have 11.1, our next July meeting, July 10th, is our regular board meeting. That is pushed back due to the 4th of July holiday, so we will not be meeting the week of 4th of July, which is the 3rd, I believe, or it's on the 2nd. Yeah. Okay, great. Any other announcements that I missed? Okay. Item 12, discussion. I just had a reminder. You do have all the information in Google Doc you need to complete Mrs. Soselski's evaluation. Dr. Busch sent that out, so please make sure to do so by Friday. And then that will be discussed at our July meeting. Any other discussion? I know it's been a long day. Appreciate everyone's time and effort today. All right. Superintendent's report.
Yes, welcome to our newest board member. We'll be in contact to get you some onboarding and
But thank you, everybody who came out. It was amazing to have this many people interested in sitting on our Board of Education. It is a thankless job on a daily basis. So all of you that are willing to kind of put your name in the hat, I really appreciate it. And it just speaks to the great community that we have.
Thank you, thank you. That's it. All right, well, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion, support?
Support.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 7:30 PM on the dot. Thank you, everyone.